For today's lesson, we're going to be graphing quadratic equations. And it's 3 steps. Step number 1, find the vertex. Step number 2, create a table. And step number 3, plot the points and graph it. So in our equation, we have A, B, and C. And the first thing we want to do is find the vertex with negative b over 2a. That point, that number, is pretty important because that is going to be your line of reflection. That's your center point. So what we do is we take that value and we put it right in the middle of the table. So we're going to pick 2 numbers smaller and 2 numbers larger. So for this case, we're going to assume that when we did negative b over 2a, we got the value of 3 because 2 numbers smaller are 2 and 1, and 2 numbers larger are 4 and 5. Then you can do the work in here, and you're going to get a bunch of numbers. Once you get that table completed, you can then go to the graph, and you can basically plot those points, and you get a curve. So we're going to be doing 3 graphs together. The first one we have is y equals x squared minus 6x plus 6. So the first thing we want to do is find the vertex, which is negative b over 2a. So we have negative, and b is negative 6. So it's minus a negative 6 divided by 2 times a, and a is 1. So we get a positive 6 over 2, which is equal to 3. So now what we want to do is we want to write our table. So we have x, and then our equation, x squared minus 6x plus 6, and then our y. 3 is going to go in the middle, which means we have a 2 and 1 and a 4 and a 5. And we want to plug these numbers in. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and 5 squared is 25. Next, 6 times 1, so we have minus 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. And if you guys are getting a little lost, we're just basically doing negative 6 times whatever x is. So going back, we have negative 6 times 4 is negative 24, and negative 6 times 5 is negative 30. If you notice, we're actually decreasing by 6 each time, and then we have plus 6 for all of them. And now when we do the math, the 6's cancel out, we're left with 1. 6 and 4 is 10, 10 minus 12 is negative 2, and then we have 15 minus 18 is negative 3, and then 22 minus 24 is negative 2, and then 31 minus 30 is 1. And notice the numbers tend to repeat. So we can plot those points, and we have 1, 1, 2, negative 2, 3, negative 3, 4, negative 2, and 5, 1. So we now have this curve that looks something like that. All right, the next problem. All right, change the color up. Let's do blue this time. Again, we start off with negative b over 2a. And b is 6, so it's going to be negative 6 over 2 times a, where a is 1. And again, negative 6 over 2, we're going to get 3, but this time it's going to be a negative 3. So we write our table. And again, negative 3 is in the middle. So 2 numbers that are smaller and 2 numbers that are larger. So negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. Negative 4 squared, negative 3 squared, negative 2 squared, and negative 1 squared. Next, 6 times 5, negative 5 is negative 30. And then 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. Then we have negative 18. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, and minus 6. And finally, we're going to add 7 to all of them. So for the first one, we have 32 minus 30, which is 2. 16 plus 7 is 23. 23 minus 24 is negative 1. 16 minus 18. And then 11 minus 12. And then 8 minus 6 is 2. So we plot these points. We have negative 5, positive 2. Negative 4, negative 1. Negative 3, negative 2. Negative 2, negative 1. And negative 1, 2. And here is your graph. The last one we're going to be working on today is going to be a little different. Notice A is negative this time. So we have negative B over 2A. So we have a negative 6 over 2 times a negative 1. And a negative divided by negative is positive. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we're going to write our table. And 3 goes in the middle, so we have 2 numbers smaller and 2 numbers larger. So here's where it gets a little tricky. When we plug in 1, 1 squared is 1. And then there's a negative sign in front of it. 2 squared is 4, and then there's a negative sign in front of it. 3 squared is 9, and again, there's a negative sign in front of it. And it's going to be the same thing over that, just like that. The next problem, or the next part, 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2, 6 times 3, 6 times 4, and 6 times 5. And then we subtract 6 from each one. So the first one going across, the 6's cancel out and you're left with negative 1. Then we have negative 10 plus 12 is 2. Negative 9 and negative 6 is negative 15. So negative 15 plus 18 is a positive 3. And then here, it's basically going to repeat like it did above. So we have 1, negative 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 2, and 5, negative 1. And now we have the same curve, but this time it's basically upside down. And ultimately, whenever you have a negative sign in front, it's a frown. And if it's a positive x squared, it's going to be smiling. This is the lesson for today. The assignment is going to be in the CUDA Works, so make sure you guys go there to do it. I tried creating a Google form, but the graphs were not really easily legible. So again, the assignment is in CUDA Works. I will post 2 assignments. You only have to do one of them if you ace it. If you want to get a better score, just simply do the second version of it, and I will just grab the highest of the 2 scores. If you guys have any issues with me not inputting grades and it's been a day or two, please shoot me an email. I mean, there's so many people and I may have made a mistake. If it made it in your favor, don't say anything. And if the mistake I made is hurting your grade, please let me know and just be specific, and I will get to it as soon as I can so that way you have the right grade. We're going to be having a test in 2 weeks' time, so not next week but the week after. So just be ready for that. Otherwise, have a lovely evening, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.